Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is a question I think a lot of us ponder at some point. Does marriage really make a relationship more stable? Or does it just add a whole bunch more pressure?
Ah, marriage. The
Ah,
million-dollar question, right? I mean, it's not a simple yes or no, is it? It's something that people think about no matter where they are in the relationship journey.
yeah, for sure. On the one hand, it's the ultimate symbol of love and commitment, you know? But then you start thinking, and sometimes it feels like maybe it's more about what other people expect. Or even like maybe you'll regret it if you don't do it. So we're going to try and unpack all of that using the research and stories you sent us. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a new perspective to help you figure out your own relationships.
Exactly. It's amazing how people see marriage as both a safe place and like a pressure cooker.
Totally. So let's start with that safe place idea. A lot of your research talked about the emotional security that comes with being married. And it makes sense. It's not just about saying those two little words, but it's that public vow to be together for better or worse, no matter what. That's got to be a powerful thing on a psychological level.
For sure. There's something to be said for making that promise in front of your family and friends. Like some studies have even shown that these public vows can actually make your bond stronger because it keeps you accountable to each other and to everyone who witnessed it. And you can draw on that shared story when things get tough.
It's almost like you're creating this tapestry of commitment together. And every time you publicly say, I do, it's like you're adding another thread. It just gets stronger and can handle more.
That's a great way to think about it. And don't forget about the more practical side of things, too. Like marriage also gives you security when it comes to legal and financial stuff. Shared health insurance, tax benefits, inheritance rights, all those little things actually add up to peace of mind, especially when life throws you a curveball.
It really is like you're building a solid foundation for your life together. And marriage kind of reinforces all that with the legal and social recognition.
Yeah.
But obviously, no relationship is perfect.
Yeah.
And marriage
Yep.
makes some things hard. Like all those expectations, a lot of the articles you sent pointed to that societal pressure as a big source of stress for married couples.
That's so true. It's like as soon as you say, I do, there's this invisible checklist that appears. Buy a house, have kids, be financially successful. And if a couple doesn't want those things, or if they have different priorities, that pressure to fit in can be a real bummer.
And sometimes it's not even coming from other people. One article talked about this internal checklist idea. It's like people pressure themselves to get married because they think it's what they're supposed to do at a certain age.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be a real problem because then people are making these huge life decisions based on what other people think or what they think they should be doing instead of what they actually want. Like someone might feel like they have to propose after dating for a while, even if they aren't totally sure or haven't talked about if they really work as a couple.
And that brings up something super important in any relationship, but especially in marriage: communication.
Mm.
How does that pressure of forever affect how couples talk to each other and work through problems?
That's a really good question. From the research you shared, it seems like the stakes are just higher once you're married. Like every fight, every little problem,
Yeah.
it all feels bigger because it's forever now. And that can lead to two extremes. Some couples try to over communicate, like they're trying to make everything perfect all the time.
Right. So they don't want to rock the boat,
Yeah.
and they end up just ignoring the important stuff.
Exactly. And then there are couples who avoid tough conversations altogether. They're too scared of fighting or messing up their happily ever after, so they just keep things peaceful on the surface, even if they're actually really frustrated.
So it's almost like that promise, the till death do us part thing.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be comforting, but it can actually make it harder to be honest with each other. But doesn't that commitment also push couples to really try and work things out? I mean, breaking up isn't so easy once you've said those vows.
That is a really interesting point. You're right. Being committed like that can actually make you face the challenges head on. Because when you really believe you're in it for the long haul, you might be more willing to go to therapy or put more effort into the relationship and learn to communicate better than if you could just break up easily.
It's kind of like that commitment forces you to deal with things head on and hopefully come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I guess the trick is having the right tools to handle those challenges. And speaking of real life, you sent over some listener stories that show all these different sides of marriage.
Oh, yeah. One listener said getting married just made them feel so much more secure and stable, especially because of all those legal and financial benefits. We were talking about that earlier. It's like marriage gives you that foundation and structure that makes you feel safe.
It reminds me of that hierarchy of needs thing, the one where you have to feel safe and secure before you can really grow as a person. I think for some people, marriage kind of checks those boxes and that frees them up to focus on other things.
So like once you have that security, you can focus on the relationship and becoming a better person.
Mm.
But then there's the other side of it. We heard from another listener who felt so much pressure to make their marriage look perfect,
Mhm.
and it ended up making them feel trapped by the whole forever thing.
Yeah, that's a good example of how those expectations we were talking about can actually ruin the experience of being married. When you
Yeah.
feel like you have to live up to this perfect image, it's not real anymore. You're just playing a part.
It's exhausting. It's like we all absorb those messages from society. But when those expectations are more important than the actual connection you have with your partner,
Yeah.
that's when things start to go wrong.
Yeah.
I guess what we're seeing is that marriage affects everyone differently depending on who you are, what you expect, and the relationship itself.
Exactly. There's no right answer when it comes to marriage. For some people, it's a source of strength and stability, but for others, it feels limiting. It all depends on how good you are at talking about your needs, working through arguments, and dealing with all the changes that life throws at you.
Which brings us to the big question. What if you are feeling that pressure? Whether you're thinking about getting married or you're already married, are there things you can do to make it better?
Definitely. First, you got to figure out what marriage means to you, to your partner. Not what society says or what other people are doing. What are the things you absolutely need? And what are you willing to bend on? Don't let anyone else tell you what your marriage should look like.
I love that. It's your marriage.
Hmm.
Own it. And it seems like talking to each other is like the most important thing.
Couldn't agree more. So many problems come up just because couples don't talk enough or they're scared to have those hard conversations. If you can create a space where you both feel safe to say what you really feel and be honest about your hopes and fears, that builds trust, and that's what helps you get through the tough times.
You have to be partners working together, not just two people stuck in a contract. One of the therapists you quoted said, make decisions as a team, not as two individuals bound by a contract. That really changes how you think about it.
Right. Marriage is all about teamwork and making choices together. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. If you're feeling overwhelmed or you just can't seem to communicate, a therapist can give you the tools you need to work through those things.
You don't have to have all the answers. There are people who can help you figure out all these complicated feelings and make the right choices for you. It sounds like what we're saying is you have to make those choices and really think about what you want right. Going into marriage, or if you're already married, you got to be realistic about what it means and what you might face.
Absolutely. It's about figuring out what you and your partner want your marriage to be. And that has to come from you, not from what you see on TV or what your family thinks. It's about your values, what you dream about, and the kind of life you want to build together.
And knowing that just like with any relationship, you got to put in the work. Marriage isn't the finish line. It's just the beginning. It's a journey with ups and downs and surprises along the way.
A journey that can be amazing if you have the right attitude and the right tools. Marriage can be a source of strength and a way to build a life together, but it doesn't magically make you happy. Happiness comes from choosing to make the relationship a priority, talking to each other, and supporting each other as you grow.
This has been so interesting. We really dug deep into this whole marriage thing, and I think we showed just how complicated it is. There's no one right answer. It's about understanding the good and the bad, the risks and the rewards that come with making that kind of commitment.
And hopefully this gave you some things to think about as you figure out your own relationships. Maybe a good question to ask yourself is, how much does our culture's idea of this perfect romantic marriage add to the pressure people feel? Can we change that? Can we see marriage as a choice, not an obligation? A way to celebrate love and partnership instead of just another thing you're supposed to do?
That's a great question to end on. It reminds us that you and your partner get to decide what marriage means to you. Keep talking about it, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
And never forget, every relationship is different. What works for one couple might not work for another. The important thing is to find what makes you happy, what brings you closer, and what gives you a sense of purpose. That's what makes any relationship work, whether you're married or not.
So true. We'll leave it there for today. Thanks for joining us on another deep dive. Keep those questions coming, and we'll be back to tackle more of life's big questions.